Chapter 7. Thomas Allen Anderson. I wrote my first letter to Thomas in February, and then I waited for a response. The letter I received in return really tugged at my heartstrings. It was so crudely written, and there were so many misspellings and scratched through words, I felt as if I was reading the work of one of my students. To be honest, it was worse than they even write. But his letter was warm and sweetly written. He thanked me for writing him and explained that I was the first person to do so since he had been incarcerated. His own mother had disowned him, and this had troubled him greatly. He figured that she had to in order to live in the town. As he put it, she had to still live there and work, and in order to have any peace at all, she had to condemn him. We only spoke through letters for the first 6 months. He was in prison on the other side of the state, and it would have been a long drive for just a 2-hour visit. When at last I decided to go and see him, I figured I would make a weekend of it. I would see him on Sunday, but I would first make a stop where he had lived and do a little looking around. I decided to put on my best detective hat and see what I could see. The town was just as I expected. It was a sleepy little mining town that had seen better days. Most of the shops in the square were closed down, and there was an air of desperation on most of the faces I saw. I first made a stop at the local graveyard and visited the grave of Miss Amy Pilford. There were new flowers on her grave, and she had a nice granite stone. There was a picture of her in the stone, and an engraving that read, "Amy Pilford, beloved wife, daughter, and sister. A new angel has arrived in heaven." I had contacted her family, and they had agreed to meet with me. Her maiden name is Baxter, and I found her mother and father to be very nice people. I also had a chance to meet her little sister, Mary. Mary was a beautiful, delicate little creature. She was very thin and had the face of a doll. She had been born blind. As I sat and spoke with her, my eyes filled with tears. I thanked God that she was blind so she could not see the tears streaming down my face as she told me of her beloved sister. "We had always been very close," Mary said. "She was a great big sister and had always been my keeper and watcher." "That is so wonderful," I had said as I held her hand in my own. Mary smiled softly. "Mom and Dad had always told her to be gentle with me ever since we were little. She was the most gentle. She never forgot about me, and she would always tell everyone to wait, as she would make sure to bring me along. She was the first to take me by my hand, and away we would go. I've always felt that I wouldn't have had the most exciting life that I have had if it hadn't been for Amy. Most people that led me around do so in such a gentle way, as if they might break me. They are so careful. They move so slowly, telling me to look out and take my time. Amy," Mary said with a laugh, "she would just take me by my hand and off we would go running. I would have a smile on my face a mile wide, and we would run after life. She always dragging me behind." I also smiled. "She sounds amazing." "Oh," Mary recalled, as she patted my hand in her own, "she was my angel." The tears welled up in her eyes and began to run down her lovely face. "Here," I said as I held out a Kleenex and placed it in her hand. Mary just smiled as she dropped the Kleenex on the floor. "Amy told me never to be ashamed to cry. Hell, she would say, 'You can't see them staring at you anyway.' I don't mind crying over her. I don't care who sees me either." My time with the Baxters was very painful. They were a great family, but I could tell that a huge part of their life was missing. In a family, you love everyone, but everybody knows who is the centerpiece of the family. They're the glue that holds everything together. Amy had been that glue in the Baxter household. She had brought her blind sister out of the darkness and into the light. They had shared a big room with 2 beds on either side of the room. I was amazed at all the pictures that were plastered on the walls. All from different occasions, showing 2 sisters with their arms around one another and always smiling. Mary may have been born blind, but she had been shown the world through Amy's eyes. Mary even confessed to me in the privacy of their room that it had been Mary that had helped her to get her first kiss. It had been down by the river when Amy had been 16 and she was just 14. There had been a big group of them, and Amy was whispering in her ear all day about a boy named Josh. She had explained him in excruciating detail. She had spoken of his golden color hair and the deep blueness of his eyes, even though Mary did not even know what she meant. She had made him sound so lovely, like a great work of art. He was like Michelangelo's David come to life. She had brought them together in the early evening just as the bonfire had been lit, and Josh had kissed her as the fireflies danced on the summer breeze. Amy had given them their privacy, but she had watched from the distance like a concerned mother. Mary and Josh had married 1 year after Amy had died. Amy had not only given her sister the world, but she had also found love for her baby sister as well. After my time with the Baxters, I visited Todd Pilford at his home. The past few years had been the most difficult for him. Being a sheriff's deputy had placed a lot of weight on his shoulders. He felt that he should have had the power to protect his new bride. We were watching television, and Amy needed milk and bread from the store. I didn't think nothing of it. Sure, it was snowing, but we've lived here our entire life. It's not like she hasn't driven in the snow before. And she left, and I told her, hey, pick me up some beef jerky and some beer. And she smiled at me one last time and then out the door. That was the last time I seen her. How long had she been gone before you grew concerned? I asked Todd. It'd been about an hour. I was sitting here watching the news, and I remember thinking, damn, Amy's been gone for a while. I looked at the clock, and I seen that it was a little over an hour. It was only about 2 miles from the house to the store. It was snowing, but not that heavy. When I got to the store, I saw her car still parked in the parking lot, and I figured maybe it wouldn't start, so I went and checked it, but she wasn't inside. I then went inside and I talked to Sam, and he said that she had been there. Yeah, he told me that Tom Anderson had been there as well, and he made him leave because he thought he was trying to shoplift. Did you know Thomas? I asked. No, but I knew of him. He had a reputation in the town. Every time a car was stolen or a shed got broken into, safe bet was that Thomas had something to do with it. He crashed with fellow drug addicts over at the trailer park, and most of the time he was easy to find. At first it never hit me that Thomas could have anything to do with any of this. He was a doper, sure, but he had never been violent before. Even in the past, he had been arrested, he always came along peacefully. Why do you think he did it? I think he tried to rob her, and she fought. And that's when he hit her. And when he hit her, he realized that he hurt her pretty bad, and I think he got scared. You know, Amy was a pretty girl, and, you know, he was on that meth, and I heard that meth can, you know, get you kind of horny or something. And I don't know if it's true or not, but maybe on that stuff, you know, he wasn't thinking right, and that's why he raped her. I just think he was crazy or something in the moment. I don't mean to bring up bad memories, but did you see her body after they found her? No, they wouldn't let me look at her. But at the trial, we saw a lot of pictures. He really chewed her up and spat her out. This is a private thing, and I don't want to offend you, Todd said as he reached out and took me by the arm. I was shaking my head as I leaned in. I'm not trying to be gross or perverted, Todd said, but Amy was a small woman. I mean, it was hard for us to have sex in certain positions. It hurt her, and I had to be careful, because if I got too excited, she would sometimes bleed afterward. When I think about what that savage did to her, the way he screwed her, the way he hurt her, I just want to kill him. She was so gentle and soft. I was always so careful when we made love. But he hurt her. He tortured her before he even killed her. I want to kill him with my own 2 hands. As a woman, Todd's confession struck a chord deep within my soul. Us women are very emotional creatures. whereas men are visual creatures. To us, the act of lovemaking is a spiritual event. In today's modern world, many women have lost that. But to us old-fashioned ladies, it still means a lot. That is the one thing that men will never understand when it comes to rape. When a woman gives herself to a man, it's a special gift. She gives to him her body and her soul. She is naked and exposed before him, and she says to him, "This is all I have. I hope that it satisfies you." But to then have that gift ripped from you so savagely and to have pain inflicted is a form of torture, just the way Todd had said. It's supposed to be soft and easy at first and then grow as two bodies become one and accept the other. But to just force it so viciously is horrible. It is rape of the body, mind, and soul. My last stop of the day was the Anderson home itself, where I saw his mother Alice sitting out on the front porch smoking a cigarette as I pulled into the drive. The years had not been kind to her, and she looked frail and sickly. She had big black circles under both eyes, and her fingertips were stained yellow from nicotine. We sat on the porch and talked. "So do you think Thomas did it?" I asked. She looked at me, her eyes dull and glassy. She exhaled smoke from her nose and the corners of her mouth. "On that shit, I wouldn't put it past him. That dope really fucked him up." "Had he been violent in the past?" "No," Alice said as she rolled her eyes. "Was there anything else that you might have seen?" "No," Alice said with a scoff as she took a drag and then exhaled. "Well, wait a minute. Maybe this one time. When he was 10 or 11, there had been this incident when he was using the bathroom and his butt was bleeding." "His butt was bleeding?" I asked. "Not his butt, out his asshole," Alice said. "I don't understand." "He was taking a crap, and when he wiped his butt, there was blood on the toilet paper, and he called me in. At first, I thought maybe he had some E. coli, but he never ran a fever, and the bleeding stopped in a day or two. I never said anything to him, but I wondered if maybe he was sticking things up there, or if someone else might have done something. Do you think someone molested your son?" Alice's revelation was astonishing to me. If the boy had been traumatized, that could go a long way in explaining why he might have killed Amy so brutally. It might even explain why he raped her anally, as he tried to victimize her as he was victimized. "No," Alice said angrily. "I just thought it was strange. And then he was scared to go in the woods up behind the house. He used to love to go play in those woods, and then one day he would just sit on the back steps and stare up into the trees." "Can you take me around back and show me?" "Come on," Alice said as she got up and walked around to the back of the house. She then pointed a bony finger to a well-beaten path that led up into the nearby forest. I turned to her. "Would you mind if I looked around a bit?" "Nah, help yourself. I'll be up at the house." Alice puffed her cigarette and walked towards the house. I turned and began to make my way up the path and into the trees. The path took a winding way as I entered beneath the canopy of trees, and it did not take too long until I found myself all alone in the midst of the emerging forest. I turned back to where I knew the house was located and realized that the forest thickened very quickly, and the very side of the house was now obscured by the dense undergrowth. The forest had grown much darker as I went along, and the air had chilled. It was beautiful, peaceful, and tranquil up here in the depths of the dark woods. Before long I heard the bubbling of a small brook, where I took a moment to rest on the leftovers of a long since fallen pine. As I sat in the peaceful surroundings of the trees, I heard the snap of a stick off in the distance. I looked all around. My head moved like it was on a swivel. Again I heard the sound of limbs cracking, and it was then that I saw a dark figure emerging from out of the shadows. He was a large man. He was wearing overalls. He carried a shotgun over his wide shoulders, and his head was bald. He had chin whiskers and a ratty mustache. He was missing a few teeth. As he approached me, I stood up from the fallen tree I had been resting on and stared at him intensely. He eyed me up very hard. He stopped about 10 feet from where I stood, and it was then that I got a good whiff of this behemoth of a man. He smelled just awful. "What you doing out here?" he barked at me. "I was just going for a walk. I'm visiting friends at the house just down the path." "These ain't no woods to be walking around in. Many people got business set up here, and might not take kindly to you walking up and giving them bother." I knew exactly what he meant. He was talking about illegal stills. "I'm sorry. I was unaware. I meant no harm." He looked at me from top to bottom as he squinted both eyes. "These here woods are dark and deep. They ain't meant to be a place for wandering. Anything could happen out here, and you would be all alone. Nobody would even hear you scream." "Well, thank you," I hurried as I took a step back. I'll be very careful." "You could fall and hit your head, and you would be bones before they discovered you. If they ever discovered you," the man remarked. The sweating, hulking man's words sent shivers down my spine. Well, thank you. I'm going to be going now," I said. I turned and hurried as fast as I could back down the path, stealing glances back over my shoulder at the man as I went along. My heart was pounding as I reached the relative safety of the backyard of the house, where the trees began to thin. I turned back and looked up into the trees. While I stood there, I felt that I was being watched. I felt deep dread and terror, and I never even said goodbye to Alice as I hurried to my car and left. I did not feel safe until I had reached the paved road and turned out and sped up as I escaped the deep and hidden hollow. A part of me now understands the world in which Thomas had grown up in. Even though his mother seemed loving enough, there was carelessness there, unfeeling, a sense that I had picked up from her. I imagine how hard it would have been for a boy living back up there, much less an attractive young lady. How Alice must have felt the luring eyes upon her as her body matured and she became a full-grown woman. Back up in those woods, it was beautiful yet frightening. It was a hidden place, far off the beaten path, where anything was possible. Those woods held dead secrets.